Well, this was a pretty commanding victory for Mr. Johnson. He got about 30 more votes from lawmakers than many had expected, although it turns out, according to both the BBC and the Spectator magazine here in the UK, that he got exactly the number of MPs to vote for him as his team had secretly predicted. This was a secret ballot, so there were a lot of people that seemingly voted for him that hadn't publicly endorsed him. It meant he ended up with more than a third of all votes on offer amongst the Conservative Parliamentary Party, and it means that he's well ahead of his rivals. Now, as you might expect, those rivals have come out and said he's running scared. He doesn't want to participate in TV debates, potentially, that take place on Sunday and then Tuesday on two of the domestic broadcasters here. And going into next Tuesday, that's where we'll see a second round of votes. There's around 30 fresh MPs available to try and be mopped up by some of these remaining candidates because of the elimination of those three you just mentioned, Karen. And so going into next week, we expect many of these candidates to stay around. They have until lunchtime today to let the executive body of the party know if they do intend to drop out. The criticism of Mr. Johnson makes a lot of sense from their perspective, of course, because as front runner, they can use his divisive reputation within the party to try and win over some of those new votes available to them. And as front runner, he has all to lose, which may be one of the reasons critics are saying he doesn't want to submit himself to media scrutiny and give one-on-one interviews. He doesn't want to appear on TV debates because this is a man who is notorious for shooting from the hip during public appearances. And there's a concern amongst his team that if he does that at the wrong moment, we could see this lead fall back slightly.
Willem, this is interesting because you and I have followed this, in a minutiae for a long while as well now. The parliamentary party, yes, gave him a strong endorsement yesterday, but the other couple of hundred MPs who didn't vote for him are pretty much implacably against him, it seems, at the moment as well. Will there be an effort from the more dovish, more Remainer end of the party to find a champion to go up against him? I.e., will they be able to get behind one candidate, or will actually that just dissolve because of these rivalries in the different factions in the Conservative Party?
Well, the Guardian newspaper here in the UK, Steve, has been reporting after the vote yesterday that some of the opponents to Mr. Johnson had in fact been meeting together to talk about the possibility of somehow working together. Those that got, around 20 to 30 votes, if they were to team up, that would give them a much better chance of getting close to his, at the moment, very commanding lead. There's no confirmation publicly from any of these candidates that will happen, but of course it depends on their individual egos, their individual ambitions, whether they're prepared to put that possibility of a victory ahead of their own personal ambition. And going into next week, clearly it's not just the bookmakers now that believe he's going to win. A huge number of MPs have backed him. As I said, 30 more than people expected, but as you point out quite rightly, there are still a couple of hundred who have not been prepared to vote for him so far, who are willing to publicly criticise him and simply do not think he's suitable to become the next Prime Minister. One thing we do know for certain, though, that because of Esther McVey and Andrea Leadsam's elimination, the next Prime Minister of Great Britain and Northern Ireland will be a man.
Yeah, and who'd have thought Lorraine Kelly had so much power still to destroy Esther McVey? That was quite humorous for those of us watching Britain. Look, one more question for you. Karen and I were talking about this Comres poll yesterday in the Telegraph. There are huge questions about the Comres poll in the Telegraph as well. But cut a long story short, for our international viewers, it said the Tories could have a potential landslide if Boris Johnson was the Prime Minister as well. Simple question. So does anybody else think that's got credibility?
If you listen to some of the polling experts out there, some of the political scientists at various UK universities, their criticism of that poll is not so much the field work, it's the framing, the methodology behind it. When you have a man like Boris Johnson, who's been so central to British politics over the last 15 years, his name recognition means that when you frame questions leading into a poll like that, you have to take a lot of the responses with a pinch of salt. A lot of the positions of the other candidates are not yet publicly known, whereas in a few weeks' time, in theory, after more scrutiny, more public debates, more hustings, people will understand what their positions are, especially when it comes to Brexit. And that really is going to be the position that a lot of our audience, investors, business owners are going to be very focused on, is what are these men prepared to do now as next Prime Minister when it comes to dealing with the European Union, when it comes to the possibility of crashing out of the EU without a deal at the end of October. And that is something that people right now don't necessarily understand well enough, especially amongst the Conservative membership, the 150,000 odd people around the country that will have a chance to vote on the final two candidates. Right now, Boris Johnson, as frontrunner, as the most high-profile person running in this race, has an obvious advantage when it comes to those polls. So a lot of the experts, if you read their analysis over the last 24 hours of that Comrades poll you point to, say that quite a lot of the findings should be discounted.
Hi, I'm Joanna Bersecci, and thank you for watching. You can check out more of our videos by clicking on the boxes on the screen. And don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more from CNBC International. Thank you for watching.